The ballroom of the Riverside Hotel glowed with warm light as Gregory Sullivan stood at the edge of the crowd, nursing his third whiskey of the evening. After 32 years at Meridian Security Systems, tonight marked his official retirement. His colleagues had insisted on throwing this party, a gesture he'd reluctantly accepted. At 63, Gregory had spent his career building one of the most sophisticated private security firms in the country, though few understood the true scope of his operations. Speech. Let's hear from the man of the hour, called Terrence Wilson, Gregory's longtime deputy, who would be taking over as CEO. Gregory approached the small podium, uncomfortable with the attention. The faces looking back at him were mostly colleagues and business associates. His gaze settled briefly on the table where his family sat. His ex-wife Vanessa, looking elegant and cold as ever. Their son Brandon, now 30, their daughter Melody, 27, and sitting beside Vanessa, Russell Hayes, her husband of 8 years, an investment banker with a perfect smile and manicured nails. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," Gregory began. "Meridian has been my life's work, and I'm proud of what we've built. The company is in good hands with Terrence and I. Dad, come on." Brandon's voice cut through the room as he stood, glass in hand. The slight slur in his words indicated he'd been drinking heavily. "No need to be so formal. Tell everyone the truth about your distinguished career." The room fell silent. Gregory's expression remained neutral, masking the sudden tension. "Brandon," Melody warned, tugging at her brother's sleeve. "What? Everyone should know what kind of man is getting all these accolades." Brandon continued, eyes fixed on his father. "My stepdad makes twice what you do," he blurted out, gesturing toward Russell. "Mom says leaving you was her smartest decision." Gregory noticed Vanessa smirk rather than show embarrassment. She'd always been skilled at maintaining appearances, but tonight she seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. "Brandon, that's enough," Gregory said quietly. Vanessa stood, raising her champagne flute. Her burgundy dress caught the light as she moved. "To trading up," she called out with a laugh that several guests uncomfortably echoed. Gregory simply nodded, finished his drink in one swallow, and set the glass down. Without another word, he walked calmly through the stunned crowd, collected his coat, and left. The drive home to his lakeside property was quiet, the dark road matching his thoughts. In his study, Gregory opened his laptop and typed in a complex string of characters. A secure messaging system appeared on the screen. He typed 5 words. "Initiate protocol shadow." Confirmed. The response came seconds later. "Authorization accepted." Timeline. Gregory's fingers hovered over the keyboard momentarily before he replied. "Begin in the morning." He closed the laptop, poured another drink, and gazed out at the moonlight reflecting off the lake. Tomorrow, everyone would understand exactly who Gregory Sullivan really was. Dawn broke over the lake as Gregory jogged along the shoreline path. Despite his age, he maintained the rigorous physical discipline instilled during his early days in military special operations. The morning air was crisp, clearing his head after a restless night. 30 years ago, when he'd met Vanessa Bennett at a charity gala in Washington, D.C., Gregory had already been recruited into a classified division of military intelligence. She'd been beautiful, sharp-witted, and ambitious, a rising star in public relations for political campaigns. Their courtship had been a whirlwind, and within a year, they were married. Gregory showered after his run and prepared coffee in his minimalist kitchen. The home was largely empty of personal touches except for a few photographs of Brandon and Melody from their childhood. He rarely looked at them anymore. The secure phone buzzed. The text read, "Packages delivered. Awaiting your signal." Outside, the distinct sound of a helicopter approaching broke the morning quiet. Right on schedule. The Black Bell 429 touched down on his private helipad at the edge of the property. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped out and approached the house. "Morning, Mr. Sullivan," said Raymond Vega, Gregory's security chief from Meridian. "Everything's prepared as requested." The board meeting has been moved to 10 a.m. Thank you, Raymond. Gregory grabbed his briefcase. Any media activity? Not yet, but our sources say several outlets received anonymous tips to watch for breaking news concerning Meridian. Gregory nodded. Perfect. As the helicopter carried them toward the city, Gregory reflected on the gradual collapse of his marriage. His cover as the founder of a security systems company had been ideal for his actual role within a shadow intelligence operation known as Division. The frequent absences, the late-night calls, the international travel. Vanessa had initially accepted these as part of building a successful business. By the time Brandon was born, the cracks had begun to show. When Melody arrived 3 years later, Vanessa had grown increasingly resentful of his apparent prioritization of work over family. What she never knew was that Gregory had been instrumental in neutralizing multiple national security threats, operating in a world where recognition and praise were impossible. The beginning of the end came when Brandon was 12. Gregory had missed his son's championship baseball game due to an operation in Kazakhstan that had saved thousands of lives. No one would ever know about it. To his family, he was simply an absent father who cared more about security systems than his children. Vanessa filed for divorce when Brandon was 16 and Melody 13. She'd already been seeing Russell Hayes, a flashy, self-promoting investment banker who had aggressively courted her at every opportunity. The divorce had been brutal. Vanessa had taken the children, the house, and a substantial settlement. Gregory hadn't fought it, partly because he couldn't reveal the nature of his work, and partly because his handler had advised that a clean break would provide better operational security. "Sir, we're approaching the Meridian building." Raymond's voice pulled Gregory from his memories. "Execute Operation Checkmate," Gregory instructed, "and make sure our friends at the FBI have received Package 3. Raymond nodded, tapping instructions into his secure tablet. "It's done." The helicopter descended toward the Meridian headquarters, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that housed much more than the public-facing security systems business. The Meridian Systems boardroom fell silent as Gregory Sullivan entered. The executive team, 12 men and women who represented the company's public face, looked nervous. News vans had begun gathering outside the building, though none of them knew why. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gregory began, taking his seat at the head of the table for the last time, "I want to thank you for accommodating this emergency meeting." Terrence Wilson, his successor, leaned forward. "Gregory, what's going on?" "CNN is downstairs, and there are rumors about some major announcement." "Yes," Gregory replied calmly. "In approximately 20 minutes, several news organizations will break a story that will significantly impact Meridian and a number of other entities." He placed a folder on the table. "This contains everything you need to know. I suggest you read it now." As the executives opened their folders, Gregory watched their expressions shift from confusion to astonishment. This can't be real," whispered Catherine Novak, the CFO. "I assure you, it is," Gregory said. The door opened, and Raymond entered with a tablet. "Sir, it's starting." Gregory nodded and pressed a button to lower a screen at the end of the room. The television switched on to show a breaking news banner across the screen. "Classified operation revealed. Domestic terror network neutralized." The reporter's voice filled the room. "In a stunning revelation, classified documents have been declassified this morning, revealing a decade-long operation that prevented what would have been the deadliest domestic terror attack in American history. The operation, codenamed Obsidian Shield, was reportedly led by a cover team operating within a private security firm, Meridian Systems, under the direction of its founder, Gregory Sullivan. Images flashed across the screen. Surveillance photos, intercepted communications, and finally, Gregory's official military photograph from 20 years earlier. Sullivan, who retired just last night from Meridian, was apparently the architect of an intelligence operation that identified and neutralized a network of over 30 terrorist cells embedded within the United States, According to these newly declassified documents, the operation culminated 5 years ago with the arrest of key figures, though the details were kept classified until today for national security reasons. The boardroom remained silent as the news continued. Among those implicated in supporting these terror cells was prominent investment banker Russell Hayes, whose sources say unknowingly facilitated financial transactions for the network through his firm, Hayes Capital Partners. While Hayes himself is not accused of knowingly supporting terrorism, his firm is now under federal investigation for catastrophic failures in their compliance and due diligence protocols. Gregory watched the color drain from Terrence's face. "You planned this, didn't you?" "The timing. I spent my life in the shadows, Terrence. My family believed I was just a workaholic businessman who cared more about alarm systems than baseball games," Gregory said as he stood up. Sometimes the truth needs to come to light when the time is right. Outside the boardroom, Gregory's phone buzzed. The message read, Phase 1 complete. Target RH in financial freefall. Target VS location confirmed. As Gregory walked through the Meridian offices, employees stood and stared. Some began to applaud tentatively, unsure how to react to the revelation that their company had been a front for one of the most successful counterterrorism operations in recent history. In the lobby, a team of FBI agents was entering the building, led by Special Agent Daria Klein, Gregory's longtime liaison to federal intelligence. "Mr. Sullivan," she greeted him formally, though a hint of a smile played at her lips. "We have some questions about the classified information that suddenly found its way to the press." "Of course, Agent Klein. I'm at your disposal," Gregory replied. "Though I imagine your questions would be better directed to the Secretary of Defense, who authorized the declassification this morning." As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Gregory walked calmly to the waiting SUV. Phase 1 was complete. By evening, Russell Hayes' reputation would be in tatters, his business under federal investigation. Vanessa would find her social standing, the things she valued above all else, evaporating as her husband became toxic in Washington's elite circles. But this was just the beginning. The real reckoning was yet to come. Russell Hayes paced the marble floor of his corner office, foam pressed to his ear, face contorted with rage. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, the Washington, D.C. skyline seemed to mock his mounting predicament. "What do you mean you can't stop it? This is your job," he shouted at his attorney. "I have nothing to do with any terrorist financing. Someone has orchestrated this. Can't you see that?" On a television mounted on his wall, financial news networks were reporting the free fall of Hayes Capital Partners stock. Clients were pulling out by the dozens. The SEC had initiated an emergency audit, and 3 major banks had frozen their relationships with his firm. The door burst open as Vanessa stormed in, her usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. "Russell, what the heck is happening? I've had 6 charity boards call to request my temporary resignation, and the Sinclairs just uninvited us from their gala." Russell hung up on his lawyer mid-sentence. "It's your ex-husband. This has to be his doing." "Gregory, don't be ridiculous. He runs a security company that installs alarm systems," Vanessa scoffed, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "He doesn't have this kind of power. Weren't you watching the news? Security systems." Russell laughed bitterly. "Your ex-husband was apparently running a classified intelligence operation that took down terrorist cells. He's been playing us all for years." Vanessa sank into a chair, processing this revelation. That's impossible. I was married to him for 17 years. "Well, apparently you didn't know him at all," Russell snapped. His phone buzzed with another call, which he answered immediately. "What now?" As Russell's face drained of color, Vanessa watched with growing dread. After a moment, he hung up and looked at her, stunned. "The FBI just froze all our personal accounts. Everything. They're executing a search warrant at our house right now." "They can't do that," Vanessa protested. "We've done nothing wrong." "They can when they're investigating terrorist financing," Russell replied grimly. "And it gets worse. That vacation property we bought in the Caymans, the one we put in your name for tax purposes. It turns out the previous owner had ties to one of the terrorist cells your ex-husband was tracking. That's absurd. We bought that through a reputable agency. An agency that was apparently on a watch list, something we would have known if anyone had bothered to run a proper background check, Russell said, his voice bitter. Your ex-husband knew exactly what he was doing. He let us walk right into this trap. Vanessa's phone chimed with a text message. It was from Brandon. Mom, what's happening? My accounts are frozen, and there are reporters outside my apartment. Before she could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Melody. Mom. Her daughter's voice was trembling. Did you know? About Dad? Of course not, honey. How could I? Vanessa tried to sound reassuring. They're saying Russell's company funded terrorists. Is that true? No. It's all a misunderstanding. Then why did Dad warn me last week to liquidate my investment account with Russell? Why did he tell me not to tell you or Brandon? Vanessa felt a chill. He what? When did you speak to your father? We've been having dinner once a month for the past 5 years, Mom. I never told you because you always got so angry whenever his name came up. Melody's voice hardened. He told me things were going to change, that the truth would come out. He made sure I was protected. After hanging up, Vanessa turned to Russell, who was now sitting at his desk, head in his hands. We need to talk to Gregory, she said firmly. Now. Russell looked up, eyes blazing. You think he'll help us, after what happened at his retirement party? Vanessa's mind flashed to the previous night. The cruel toast, Brandon's drunken outburst, the public humiliation they'd inflicted. Gregory's calm departure now seemed less like defeat and more like the quiet confidence of a man who knew what was coming. I don't think he'll help, Vanessa admitted, but we need to understand what we're dealing with. The Gregory Sullivan I knew sold security systems and missed his kids' birthdays. I need to know who he really is. As they prepared to leave, Russell's assistant rushed in. Sir, agents from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network are here with a warrant. They're demanding immediate access to all records from the past 10 years. Russell and Vanessa had exchanged a look of mounting panic. The empire they'd built was collapsing around them, and they were only beginning to realize the architect of their destruction was a man they had gravely underestimated. Brandon Sullivan sat in his expensive downtown loft, watching his world unravel through his floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 news vans had parked outside his building, reporters hoping to catch a statement from the son of the newly revealed intelligence operative, Gregory Sullivan. His phone had been ringing constantly. Colleagues from the architectural firm where he worked, friends asking questions he couldn't answer, and most disturbingly, calls from financial institutions informing him that certain transactions were under review. The whiskey in his glass didn't calm his nerves as he contemplated the events of the previous night. The words he'd hurled at his father kept replaying in his mind, gaining new significance with each repetition. A knock at his door startled him. Through the peephole, he saw his sister Melody's serious face. He opened the door immediately. You've really done it this time, she said, walking past him into the apartment. At 27, Melody had inherited their father's analytical mind and their mother's striking features, but none of Vanessa's capacity for cruelty. What do you want me to say? Brandon demanded. How was I supposed to know Dad was some kind of spy? He wasn't a spy, Melody corrected, helping herself to a bottle of water from his refrigerator. From what I can gather, he ran a specialized intelligence unit that operated under the cover of Meridian Systems. And you're suddenly an expert. Unlike you, I actually talked to Dad. She fixed him with a steady gaze. I didn't buy into Mom's revisionist history of their marriage. Brandon sank onto his couch, rubbing his temples as the enormity of the situation finally began to settle around him. So what happens now? Now, Melody raised an eyebrow. Now you deal with the consequences of publicly humiliating a man who apparently spent his career outsmarting terrorists and criminals. You think he's behind what's happening to Russell's company? I don't think it. I know it. Melody pulled out her phone and showed him an email. Dad sent me this last week. It's a list of financial institutions to avoid and instructions to move my money out of any investments connected to Hayes Capital. Brandon's face paled. Did you do it? Of course I did. Dad has never steered me wrong. She put her phone away. He also told me to be at his place at noon today. I suggest you come with me. Why would I do that? He obviously set up Russell to fall, which means he's attacking Mom too. Melody leaned forward. Brandon, think about it. If Dad could orchestrate all this, the federal investigations, the perfectly timed revelations, the targeted financial implications, what else might he have planned? Don't you want to know what's coming next? Across town, in a secure room within the FBI's Washington field office, Gregory Sullivan sat across from Director Walter Phelps, a man he'd worked with on numerous classified operations. You've created quite a storm, Gregory, Phelps said, sliding a folder across the table. The Hayes investigation is legitimate. The compliance failures are real, and some of the transactions did indeed benefit watched individuals. I'm aware, Gregory replied calmly. I've been monitoring Hayes' operation for years. And you just happened to time the revelation for the day after your retirement party. Phelps couldn't hide a knowing smile. After your ex-wife and her husband publicly humiliated you. Gregory's expression remained neutral. The declassification was approved through proper channels. The timing is coincidental. That's nonsense, Phelps laughed. You've been planning this for years. The question is, what else have you set in motion? Because my analysts are finding connections we never noticed before, links between Hayes and 3 other financial institutions, all of which had suspicious transaction patterns. Gregory stood, straightening his suit. Walter, everything I've done has been in service to this country. If certain individuals find themselves caught in a crossfire due to their own poor judgment or unethical behavior, that's hardly my concern. And your son, is he collateral damage too? A flicker of emotion crossed Gregory's face before disappearing. Brandon made his choices. He aligned himself with people who prioritize status and wealth over integrity. Now he'll learn what that alignment costs. Phelps shook his head. I've known you for 20 years, Gregory. You're the most calculated operative I've ever worked with. Whatever you're planning, just make sure it stays within legal boundaries. I can't protect you if it doesn't. I appreciate your concern, Gregory said, moving toward the door. But everything that's happening now is simply the natural consequence of actions taken by others. The dominoes are falling exactly as they should. As Gregory left the FBI building, he checked his watch. It was 11:30 a.m. Melody would be arriving at his lake house soon, possibly with Brandon. Meanwhile, his sources had confirmed that Vanessa and Russell were frantically trying to locate him. All the players were moving into position, just as he had planned. 5 years of meticulous preparation was culminating in a single day of reckoning. His phone buzzed with a message from Raymond. Phase 2 initiated. Financial records delivered to SEC. Audio files prepared for distribution at your command. Gregory typed a simple response. Proceed. The web was tightening around Russell Hayes. But the true target had always been bigger than one corrupt financier. By day's end, an entire network of fraud and corruption would be exposed, with Russell and Vanessa caught squarely in the center. Vanessa and Russell arrived at Gregory's lake house to find the security gate locked and unresponsive to the code Vanessa still remembered. After several frustrated attempts, Russell drove their Mercedes around the perimeter until they found a service road that led to a maintenance entrance. This is ridiculous, Russell muttered as they approached the house on foot. The man ruins our lives, and we have to break onto his property to confront him. We're not breaking in, Vanessa corrected. I still legally have visitation rights to this property from the divorce settlement. As they rounded the corner, they spotted 2 cars parked in the driveway. Melody's sensible hybrid and Brandon's luxury sports car. The children are here, Vanessa said, surprised. Brandon didn't mention coming. They approached the front door, which opened before they could knock. Raymond Vega stood in the doorway, his imposing frame blocking their entrance. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, he greeted them formally. You're not on the approved visitor list. I don't need approval to see my own children, Vanessa snapped. Actually, you do need approval to enter this property, Raymond replied coolly. However, Mr. Sullivan anticipated your arrival and left instructions to admit you when you eventually found your way here. He stepped aside, allowing them to enter the modernist house with its wall of windows overlooking the lake. In the spacious living room, Brandon and Melody sat on opposite ends of a couch, tension evident between them. At the center of the room, a large screen displayed financial data and news reports. Mom, Melody acknowledged without warmth. Russell, where's your father? Vanessa demanded. Not here, Melody replied. He left instructions for us to wait. Russell strode to the center of the room, examining the screen. What is all this? This, came Gregory's voice from hidden speakers, is the unraveling of your financial empire, Russell. Everyone in the room startled as Gregory's face appeared on the screen, replacing the financial data. I apologize for not being there in person, but I'm attending to the final details of today's events. Gregory continued. I wanted you all to understand what's happening and why. Dad, Brandon began, whatever you think you're doing. I'm not doing anything, Brandon, Gregory interrupted. I'm simply allowing the consequences of other people's actions to unfold naturally. Russell has been engaging in questionable financial practices for years. His firm has violated compliance regulations, facilitated money laundering, and worked with entities linked to various criminal organizations. That's not true, Russell shouted. Is it? Gregory's expression remained calm. At this moment, the SEC is reviewing documentation showing that Hayes Capital Partners knowingly structured transactions to avoid regulatory scrutiny. The evidence includes recorded conversations between you and your compliance officers, where you explicitly instructed them to overlook red flags. Russell's face went pale. Those conversations were private. In your office, perhaps, but not in the Meridian manufactured security system you had installed 5 years ago. Gregory's smile was cold. The same system I personally recommended when you mentioned concerns about corporate espionage. Vanessa turned to her husband, horror dawning on her face. You said those things. You actually instructed your people to ignore compliance issues. It's standard practice in our industry, Russell defended, though his voice lacked conviction. Everyone cuts corners. Not everyone gets caught, Gregory interjected. You got caught because you made a fundamental error in judgment. You thought I was just a man you could humiliate without consequences. You never bothered to investigate who I really was or what resources I might have at my disposal. This is about last night, Vanessa realized. You're punishing us because of what happened at your retirement party. Gregory's laugh held no humor. Vanessa, last night was merely the final confirmation that I'd made the right decision. This plan has been in motion for 5 years. Ever since I discovered Russell's firm was unwittingly facilitating transactions for individuals on intelligence watch lists. If that were true, why didn't you report it immediately? Brandon challenged. I did report it to the appropriate authorities, but I also recognized an opportunity. Gregory's eyes hardened. Russell's firm wasn't the only one involved. There's an entire network of financial institutions engaged in similar practices, all connected through a sophisticated system designed to conceal the movement of billions of dollars. That's absurd, Russell protested. We would know if we were part of some criminal network. Would you, or would you simply see profitable clients and business partners who never triggered enough red flags to warrant deeper investigation? Gregory shook his head. Your greed made you vulnerable, Russell. It made you the perfect entry point for my operation. Melody leaned forward, understanding dawning. You used Russell's firm to track the entire network. Precisely. Gregory nodded approvingly at his daughter. While Russell thought he was building a financial empire, He was actually helping me map a criminal infrastructure that spans 23 countries. Today, that entire network is being dismantled in coordinated raids by law enforcement agencies worldwide. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. So we're just collateral damage in your operation? Vanessa asked, her voice small. No, Vanessa, the operation would have proceeded regardless. The particular way in which you and Russell are experiencing it, however, that's my personal touch, Gregory said, his expression softening slightly. Melody was protected because she maintained a relationship with me, despite your efforts to poison both children against their father. Brandon chose to believe your narrative without question. So he'll experience some temporary financial inconvenience until the investigations are complete. Temporary? Brandon asked. Your accounts will be unfrozen once they verify you weren't knowingly involved in Russell's activities. I've made sure of that, Gregory said, looking directly at his son. Despite your behavior, you're still my child. And what about us? Russell demanded. What happens to Vanessa and me? Gregory's expression turned cold again. Russell, by the end of today, your firm will be under full federal control. Your personal assets will be seized pending investigation. Your reputation in financial circles will be destroyed. Every client, partner, and friend who ever trusted you will be questioning that decision. You can't do this, Russell whispered. I already have, Gregory replied. As for you, Vanessa, you chose to align yourself with a man whose wealth was built on compromise and corruption. You chose status and money over integrity. Now you'll experience life without those things you valued most. Vanessa's composure finally broke. This is cruel, even for you, Gregory. Is it more cruel than telling our children their father didn't love them? More cruel than systematically turning them against me for years? More cruel than raising a toast to trading up at my retirement party? Gregory's voice remained steady. I don't think so. I think it's simply balance being restored. The screen suddenly changed to show a news broadcast. Breaking news, massive international financial fraud exposed. Multiple arrests underway. It's starting, Gregory said. I suggest you all watch carefully. The next 24 hours will be quite educational. The screen went black, leaving the four of them staring at their reflections in the dark glass. Each came to terms with the new reality Gregory Sullivan had engineered. 3 days after what the media had dubbed Financial Judgment Day, Brandon Sullivan sat in a small cafe near his apartment, scanning news reports on his tablet. The scope of his father's operation was still being revealed. 27 financial institutions implicated, over 200 arrests worldwide, and an estimated $18 billion in illicit funds identified. Hayes Capital Partners had been just one thread in an elaborate tapestry of financial crime. Russell Hayes himself now faced 16 federal charges, his reputation and fortune evaporating simultaneously. Brandon's own finances remained restricted, though, as his father had promised, the worst of the freezes had been lifted. Mind if I join you? Brandon looked up to see Leonard Frost, a man he vaguely recognized as one of his father's colleagues. In his 60s, with steel-gray hair and alert eyes, Frost carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of military training. Do I have a choice? Brandon asked bitterly. Frost sat down without waiting for further invitation. Your father suggested we talk. Let me guess, another part of his master plan. Actually, this was my idea. Frost signaled for coffee. I've known your father for 40 years. We served together before he founded Meridian. So you're here to tell me what a great man he is, how I should be ashamed for not appreciating him. Frost's laugh was unexpected. Goodness no. Greg can be a cold, calculating man when he wants to be. What happened to Hayes and your mother is proof enough of that. Brandon studied the older man with new interest. Then why are you here? Because you deserve to understand who your father really is. Frost accepted the coffee brought by the waitress. The public narrative, counterterrorism hero, intelligence mastermind, is true as far as it goes. But it's incomplete. How so? Your father's work saved thousands of lives. But it came at a personal cost few could imagine. Frost's expression grew serious. Do you know why your parents' marriage fell apart? Because he was never there. Because work always came first. That's part of it, Frost conceded. But the breaking point came after an operation in Kazakhstan went sideways. A decision Greg made saved a village of civilians, but resulted in the deaths of 2 of our operatives, young men with families. He couldn't tell your mother what happened, couldn't explain why he came home and didn't speak for 3 days, couldn't share the burden of those deaths. Brandon set down his coffee. I don't see how that excuses. I'm not excusing anything. Frost interrupted. I'm explaining. Your father lived in 2 worlds. The family man who wanted to coach your baseball team, and the operative who carried the weight of life or death decisions. The division took its toll. So my mother left him because he kept secrets. Your mother left him because she believed he didn't care enough to be present. The truth was more complicated. Frost pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. This is for you. It contains records your father kept. Mission logs, personal journals, surveillance reports. Surveillance. Of whom? Of you. Your sister. Your mother. Frost's expression was neutral. After the divorce, he assigned a protective detail to each of you. Every school event he missed, every graduation, every important moment, he witnessed through reports and photographs. Brandon stared at the device. Why would he do that? Because the work he was doing made you potential targets, and because, despite what you believe, he never stopped being your father. Frost stood, leaving money for his untouched coffee. The last file contains footage from your championship game, the one he missed when you were 12. He watched it on a secure feed from a bunker in Kazakhstan, still wearing a tactical vest with blood on his hands from trying to save his men. As Frost walked away, Brandon called after him. Why tell me this now? Why not years ago? Frost turned back. Because your father didn't want excuses to change how you felt. He believed your anger was justified, regardless of his reasons. He paused, and because now that his work is done, he's dying. The words hit Brandon like a physical blow. What? Cancer. Advanced. The doctors gave him 6 months, which is why he accelerated his retirement and the operation against the financial network. Frost's gaze was steady. He wanted to finish his mission and settle his accounts while he still could. After Frost left, Brandon sat motionless. The device was heavy in his hand. Eventually, he plugged in a set of earbuds and connected it to his tablet. The first file was dated the day of his championship baseball game 12 years ago. The video showed his father in what appeared to be a makeshift command center. Grigory's face was grimy, a bandage wrapped around his forearm. Exhaustion was evident in his eyes. He spoke quietly to the camera. Brandon hit the winning run today. Bottom of the 9th. 2 outs. Full count. I watched on the secure feed. Wanted to call him. Tell him how proud I am. But comms are compromised, and we can't risk unsecured communication for another 12 hours. Taurus and Michaels didn't make it. Their families will be told they died in a training accident. Sometimes I wonder if any of this is worth what it costs. Brandon closed the file, hands shaking. For the first time, he began to understand the man his father truly was. Across town, in her modest apartment, Melody opened her door to find Vanessa standing there, looking nothing like the polished socialite of recent years. Her hair was pulled back simply, her clothes were casual, and her eyes showed evidence of recent tears. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," Vanessa said, her voice hoarse. "About your father." Melody hesitated before stepping aside to let her mother in. "There's not much to say that hasn't been splashed across every news outlet in the country." "That's not true," Vanessa said, sitting on the couch, looking around the apartment with interest. "This is nice. I've never been here before." "You never asked to visit," Melody pointed out, remaining standing. "What do you want, Mom?" "Russell's being indicted. The evidence is overwhelming. Our assets are gone. The house is being seized. Everything. Vanessa's hands twisted in her lap. I've lost everything. I'm sorry about that, Melody said, though her tone lacked conviction. But I don't see how I can help. I'm not here for help. I'm here because I need to understand. Vanessa looked up at her daughter. You maintained a relationship with your father all these years. You knew him in a way, Brandon, and I didn't. I need to know, was he always planning this? Was our entire marriage just part of his cover? Melody sat down across from her mother. Dad never discussed you with me, Mom. He respected our relationship too much to put me in the middle. But you must have formed impressions, had insights. I did. Melody's expression softened slightly. Dad loved you, Mom. That was real. But he carried burdens you couldn't share, and eventually that created a distance you couldn't bridge. And now he's destroyed my life out of vengeance. No, Melody's tone hardened. He exposed criminal activity that Russell was involved in. The fact that it affected you personally is unfortunate, but Russell made his choices. And you believe that? That your father had no personal motivation? Melody was quiet for a moment. I believe Dad's sense of justice has always been absolute. He sees the world in terms of actions and consequences. Russell's actions had consequences. Your actions, turning Brandon against Dad, the constant undermining, the public humiliation, those had consequences too. So this is my punishment for leaving him. This is the natural result of the path you chose, Mom. Melody stood. Dad is dying. Did you know that? Terminal cancer. He's got months at best. Vanessa's face showed genuine shock. No, how long has he known? Long enough to put his affairs in order. Long enough to make sure the mission he dedicated his life to would be completed. Melody moved toward the door. I'm going to see him tomorrow. You should come. He wouldn't want to see me. Probably not. Melody agreed. But it might be your last chance to understand the man you spent 17 years with, the man you thought you knew. The private hospital room was bathed in soft light as Gregory Sullivan reviewed documents on his tablet. Despite the diagnosis, he maintained his disciplined routine, working from his bed when his strength allowed. The cancer had progressed faster than expected, leaving him with weeks rather than months. A knock at the door preceded Raymond Vega's entrance. Sir, Brandon Sullivan is here to see you. Gregory set down his tablet, surprised. Send him in. Brandon entered cautiously, taking in the medical equipment and the diminished figure of his father in the hospital bed. Despite the physical changes, Gregory's eyes remained sharp and alert. Brandon, Gregory acknowledged. I wasn't expecting you. Frost found me. Brandon remained standing awkwardly near the door. He gave me your files. Did he? That wasn't authorized. Gregory didn't sound particularly upset by the breach. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Would it have mattered? Before recent events, Brandon had no answer for that. After a moment, he pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. I watched some of the videos, read some of your journals, and I don't know what to think anymore. Brandon ran a hand through his hair in a gesture reminiscent of his father. My whole life, I believed you were just absent, uncaring, prioritizing your business over your family. In many ways, I was absent, Gregory admitted. The choice to serve in the capacity I did carried costs I accepted, but never enjoyed. But you were protecting us, all along. I was protecting many people, Brandon. You and your sister. Yes, but also countless others who will never know they were in danger. Gregory shifted slightly, grimacing with pain. The protection I arranged for you and Melody wasn't just professional duty. It was the only way I could remain your father while doing work that kept me physically absent. Brandon was quiet for a long moment. The things I said at your retirement party were painful, but understandable. Gregory finished for him. You believed what your mother told you, what the evidence of your experience suggested. I never blamed you for that. But you still punished me. My accounts were frozen, my reputation affected. Temporarily, Gregory corrected. And necessarily, to maintain the integrity of the operation. Your financial connections to Russell required investigation, but I ensured it would be expedited. Unlike what you did to Mom and Russell, Brandon said, though there was no accusation in his tone, merely observation. Russell Hayes was not an innocent bystander, Brandon. His firm facilitated transactions that funded terrorist activities, drug trafficking, and human exploitation. The fact that these activities also generated substantial profits for him was not coincidental. Gregory's voice remained measured. As for your mother, she tied her fortunes to Russell completely. That was her choice. So this was justice, not revenge. Gregory's expression remained impassive. Why not both? Before Brandon could respond, the door opened again as Melody entered, followed hesitantly by Vanessa. Gregory's eyes widened slightly at the sight of his ex-wife, the only indication of surprise he allowed himself. "I hope we're not interrupting," Melody said, moving to kiss her father's cheek. Mom wanted to come. Vanessa stood uncertainly at the foot of the bed, taking in Gregory's gaunt appearance. "You look terrible," she said finally. A hint of a smile touched Gregory's lips. "Always the charmer, Vanessa. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Would you have cared?" Vanessa flinched at the question. "Of course I would have. Despite everything, we were married for 17 years. We have children together. And yet at my retirement party, you toasted to trading up." Gregory's voice held no bitterness, merely stating fact. An interesting way to demonstrate lingering affection. Melody and Brandon exchanged uncomfortable glances as their parents regarded each other across the hospital bed. Two people who had once shared a life, now virtual strangers. "I didn't know," Vanessa said softly. "About your work, about what you were really doing all those years. I thought you were choosing your company over us." "In a way, I was," Gregory admitted. "Just not the company you thought." Vanessa moved closer to the bed. "Did you ever love me? Really? Or was I just part of your cover?" "I loved you completely," Gregory replied without hesitation. "That was never false. It was the only thing in my life that wasn't part of an operation or a mission." Tears filled Vanessa's eyes. "Then why let me go? Why not fight for us?" "Because you were happier believing I was a neglectful workaholic than knowing I was responsible for operations where people died. Because keeping you separate from that reality was the only gift I could give you." Greg's gaze was steady. "And because by the time you left, I had become someone who could orchestrate what you've experienced this past week. I wasn't the man you married anymore." The room fell silent. The weight of decades of misunderstanding and secrets hung in the air. Finally, Brandon spoke. "What happens now? To all of us?" Gregory looked at each of them in turn. Melody was never in jeopardy. She maintained her connection to me while building her own life. She'll continue as she has. He shifted his gaze to Brandon. "Your accounts will be fully restored within days. Your career might require some rebuilding given your association with Russell. But I've arranged for several opportunities to be presented to you, the choice of which to pursue will be yours." "And me?" Vanessa asked quietly. "You will be investigated as Russell's spouse, but the evidence will show you had no knowledge of his criminal activities. You won't face charges." Gregory's expression softened slightly. "The Meridian Foundation will provide you with a modest income, enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. Consider it recognition of the 17 years you gave me, and the 2 children you raised largely without my help." Vanessa wiped away a tear. "After everything that's happened, you'd still help me." "I'm not a monster, Vanessa, despite what recent events might suggest." Gregory's voice was tired. "I wanted justice, not cruelty for its own sake." Raymond appeared at the door again. "Sir, Director Phelps has arrived for your meeting." Gregory nodded. "Send him in." To his family, he added, "I'm afraid I need to attend to some final business matters." As they prepared to leave, Brandon hesitated. "Dad, I'd like to come back. Tomorrow, if that's okay." "I'd like that," Gregory replied, a genuine smile briefly illuminating his face. Outside in the hallway, Vanessa turned to her children. I don't know what to feel. All these years, I thought I knew who he was, what our marriage was. None of us really knew him, Melody said gently. Not completely. But you saw something in him that Brandon and I missed, Vanessa acknowledged. You maintained your relationship with him despite everything. Because I looked past the absences to see the intention behind them, Melody explained. Dad missed a lot, but when he was present, he was fully present. That mattered to me. As they walked toward the elevator, Brandon was silent, processing all he had learned. His father was not the man he had believed him to be. Neither the neglectful businessman, nor the perfect hero. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in the complicated middle. Behind them, FBI Director Phelps entered Gregory's hospital room, closing the door firmly behind him. You look like hell, Greg, Phelps said, taking the chair Brandon had vacated. Terminal cancer has that effect, Gregory replied dryly. Is it done? Phelps nodded. The final phase of the operation is complete. All 27 financial institutions have been secured. Key personnel arrested. The encrypted servers in Dubai have been decrypted. We've identified every transaction, every account, every beneficiary. And Hayes, singing like a canary, though he doesn't have much to offer beyond what we already know. He was a useful idiot. Nothing more. Gregory closed his eyes briefly. Good. That's good. There's something else, Phelps said, his tone changing. The experimental treatment we discussed. The DoD has authorized it under the Special Services Medical Protocol. Given your contributions, they're willing to make it available immediately. Gregory's eyes opened, showing surprise for the first time. I thought that was still theoretical. It's advanced to human trials. Early results are promising. Not a cure, but potentially years of extended life instead of weeks. Phelps leaned forward. You've more than earned it, Greg. For a long moment, Gregory was silent, contemplating. And if I accept, what would be expected of me? Nothing. You've given enough. This is the government's way of saying thank you. Gregory looked out the window at the setting sun. Let me think about it. I'll give you my answer tomorrow. After Phelps left, Gregory returned to his tablet, opening a secure messaging system. He typed a simple message, endgame successful, all targets neutralized, family safe. The response came moments later, protocol shadow complete, final phase awaiting your decision. Gregory set down the tablet and gazed out at the darkening sky. The operation he had dedicated the final years of his life to was complete. Justice had been served. His children were protected. Even Vanessa would be provided for. Now came the final decision, whether to accept the experimental treatment and extend his life, or to let go, his mission accomplished. It was, perhaps, the first purely personal decision he had made in decades. 6 months later, on a clear autumn day, Brandon Sullivan stood on the deck of his father's lake house, watching the sun sparkle across the water. Behind him, the house hummed with quiet activity as caterers prepared for the afternoon's gathering. Everything's ready, Melody said, joining him at the railing. The guests will start arriving soon. Brandon nodded. It still feels strange being here, knowing what we know now. It gets easier, his sister assured him. I've had years to adjust to the idea of who Dad really was. The past 6 months had brought dramatic changes for the Sullivan family. After much deliberation, Gregory had accepted the experimental treatment offered through the Department of Defense. While not a cure, it had halted the cancer's progression temporarily, giving him precious additional months of life. He had used that time purposefully, establishing the Meridian Foundation to continue his work in global security, arranging for Brandon to take a position within its humanitarian division, and even reconciling to a degree with Vanessa, who now served on the Foundation's Ethics Committee. Russell Hayes had pled guilty to multiple federal charges and was serving a 15-year sentence. The financial network Gregory had spent years mapping had been completely dismantled, its architects imprisoned or in hiding. "Do you think he intended this all along?" Brandon asked. "For us to know the truth, to be part of his legacy?" "I think Dad always plays the long game," Melody replied. Even now, the sound of car tires on gravel announced the first arrivals. Leonard Frost emerged from a sedan, followed by several other men and women Brandon had come to know as his father's former colleagues and operatives. Over the next hour, the house filled with people connected to Gregory Sullivan's extraordinary life. Intelligence officers, military personnel, diplomats, and even a few high-ranking government officials who arrived discreetly in unmarked vehicles. At precisely 3 o'clock, Raymond Vega appeared at the sliding glass door. "He's ready to see everyone now." The gathered guests moved into the spacious living room, where Gregory Sullivan sat in a comfortable chair positioned to take advantage of the lake view. Though thin and obviously weakened by his illness and treatments, his eyes remained sharp and alert. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice stronger than his appearance suggested. "As you know, the treatment has bought me some time, but the prognosis remains the same. I wanted this opportunity to address you all together, rather than individually." He gestured to a stack of folders on the table beside him. "Each of you will receive a detailed briefing on the Meridian Foundation's future operations. Though I won't be here to oversee them, the work must continue." His gaze found Brandon and Melody in the crowd. "My children will carry on certain aspects of that work, each in their own way. Brandon has shown remarkable aptitude for identifying humanitarian crises before they escalate. Melody's analytical skills rival any intelligence officer I've worked with." Brandon felt the surge of pride at his father's words, pride that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. "As for the rest of you," Gregory continued, "you've been chosen for your integrity, your skill, and your commitment to the principles that have guided my own work. The world remains a dangerous place, filled with threats that operate in shadows. Your job is to shine light into those shadows, regardless of what or who you expose." He paused, seeming to gather strength. "I've lived a life divided between duty and personal connection. I made choices that cost me my marriage, distanced me from my son, and forced me to maintain secrets even from those I loved most. I don't regret those choices, but I recognize their cost." Vanessa, standing near the back of the room, wiped away a tear. "The Foundation represents a different approach," Gregory said, his voice growing more passionate. "One where secrecy serves justice rather than bureaucracy, where the mission never overshadows the humanity of those who serve it. It is my final mission, and perhaps my most important one." After the formal presentation concluded, guests mingled throughout the house and grounds. Brandon found himself standing with his father on the deck, watching the afternoon light fade over the lake. "You seem at peace," Brandon observed. "I am," Gregory confirmed, "for perhaps the first time in my adult life. Even knowing what's coming." Gregory smiled faintly. "Especially knowing what's coming. When you've lived a life shaped by duty and control by necessity, there's a certain freedom in facing an enemy you can't outsmart or outmaneuver." "I wish we'd had more time," Brandon said quietly, "more time knowing the truth about each other." "We have now," Gregory reminded him, "and you'll have the rest of your life to understand my legacy, to build on it or reject it as you choose." "I won't reject it," Brandon promised. "I'm proud to be your son." Gregory reached out and grasped Brandon's hand, a rare physical gesture that communicated more than words could. Later that evening, after most guests had departed, the Sullivan family gathered in the living room. Gregory, Melody, Brandon, and somewhat surprisingly, Vanessa, shared a quiet dinner together, perhaps the first peaceful family meal they'd had in decades. "It's strange," Vanessa said as they finished. "For years, I believed I left a man who didn't care enough. Now I understand I left a man who cared too much, just not exclusively about us." "We all have our missions," Gregory replied. "Mine shaped my life in ways none of us fully understood, and nearly got you killed numerous times, based on what I've learned," Vanessa added with a hint of her old spirit. Gregory actually laughed, more times than I can count. As the evening drew to a close, Brandon and Melody helped their father back to his room, now set up in what had once been the home office. The space had been transformed into a comfortable bedroom with medical equipment discreetly arranged, and a wall of windows that would allow Gregory to watch the sunrise over the lake. "Will you be comfortable?" Melody asked, adjusting his pillows. "I'm fine," Gregory assured her, "just tired." "We'll see you in the morning," Brandon said. "The doctor's coming at 10. Gregory nodded, though something in his expression suggested he was thinking of something else entirely. After they left, he reached for his secure tablet and opened a final message. Protocol shadow completion confirmed. All objectives achieved. Teams standing by for final instructions. He typed his response. Mission complete. Protocol officially concluded. Destroy all remaining documentation. Setting the tablet aside. Gregory Sullivan, operative, father, strategist, survivor, closed his eyes and allowed himself to rest, knowing that his final mission was accomplished. Justice had been served. The people he loved were secure. His legacy would continue. In the morning, his children would begin a new chapter, one he had carefully orchestrated, but that would ultimately be theirs to write. After a lifetime in the shadows, Gregory Sullivan had finally stepped into the light, revealing himself fully to those he had always protected, even when they didn't know it. The greatest victory he had discovered was not in destroying his enemies, but in ensuring they could never again threaten what he valued most. In that, he had succeeded completely.